Welcome to Obsessed with Success, starring Russel Morgan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Obsessed with Success with Russel Morgan. Russell's the founder of Morgan Legal Group and legal entrepreneur who has built, scaled, and advised firms with a long-term view of success and sustainability. My name's Sean O'Connor, and today we're talking about irreversible decisions, the choices that don't feel dramatic in the moment, but quietly shape the future of a law firm. Russell, how are you?
Sean, glad to see you. Great to be here as always.
Yeah, I'm interested in this small decision, but deceptively huge, perhaps. So when you look back at firms that end up boxed in years later, what kinds of early decisions tend to lock them into the paths they didn't fully understand at the time? It's one of those oh, hindsight, maybe it seemed obvious. What's some that you've seen?
The first thing that's going to come to my mind is remote work. And this will apply, I would say, across the board to all businesses. And what you're seeing now is the irreversible decisions. Some folks decided to make this either a permanent remote work situation or a permanent in-house work situation. During COVID, you didn't have much of a choice. You were forced to either adapt or fold. Now you're seeing this massive reverse of everyone coming back in-house. And this is one of those decisions that, because they didn't adapt to the times, and the times dictated fluidity, that you had to be able to float, whether it's in-house, remote, hybrid, or all of the above, your business had to function at that capacity. And now you're seeing all of these firms revert back to in-house because they simply weren't able to adapt to the times. The times required fluidity. They continue to require fluidity. And part of that means some of your folks may need to be remote, some of them may need to be in-house, and some may float in and out. And that's going to depend on the needs of your businesses. And the fact that you're seeing this massive shift back, what I would call retrograding or backwards to in-house work, just shows how many major corporations simply didn't adapt or understand the need to adapt and understand that the market is now dictating that you can float. You must be able to work as necessary. That doesn't necessarily mean brick and mortar. And the fact that you're seeing this massive mandate to come back to work shows a lot more than just you need to be here. It shows me that your operations are not optimally set to allow your folks to perform outside of the office. Your management is not trained or equipped to manage your staff unless they're sitting inside of your office. And it simply spreads as a wildfire throughout your entire operation. So it's such a minor decision, but it has such a major impact to simply convert your business in a way that you can adapt regardless of the times. COVID was just one example. Today, it could be a force majeure or an act of war or another disease, something that forces us again to have to change. And the businesses that were able to make that change at the time won't necessarily be as impacted because their people are able to float in and out. The ones that you're seeing now with this massive mandate to come back to work, those are the ones that are going to burn more likely than not.
Yeah, it seems so, I mean, almost reactionary, and this sort of the boomerang effect that you mentioned with oh no, almost panic mode, in a way. But like you said, it reveals broader issues with the management of the company. I know that, some issues or some decisions rather feel, on paper they seem like, they're reversible, but in practice they ended up not being so. What how do you distinguish? What makes a decision truly hard to unwind once a firm grows into it?
Something that makes it hard to unwind is an integral part of your business. It's the way that you operate. So if let's say you're used to a certain client resource management system, just as an example, that your entire staff wholly depends on. It becomes integral to your operation. And it's not just because of the data, it's the workflows. It's the fact that your staff, your team members are trained to work with these systems. And it almost becomes impossible to either shift or change. And this is one of these moments where there's so much tech out today. There's so much capacity for you that it's almost easier for you to just build a Lego based system, for lack of better words, where you can plug and play what you need, than tether yourself to a specific CRM. And the companies that are glued to it, and it could be something legal related. LexisNexis is big. They have a massive presence. Westlaw comes to mind for certain things. But there's so much out there that allows you to design your own systems, literally design your own systems. The logic behind it is out there. The structure is out there. The knowledge, the actual libraries are out there. You just have to put it all together. But boxing yourself in to one client resource management system without the ability to pivot when that, let's say, your company outgrows it, because they're generally, just as by way of example, they're built for certain firm sizes. So a solo practitioner or a mid-sized firm may be okay with it, but once you cross a certain threshold, it may not be a good fit for you. But if you're so ingrained into this software that you can't shift, now we're at another roadblock. Now you either can't grow or you can't continue to adapt to what your client's needs are or to the size or capacity of your operation. And it may be way beyond the reach of the current CRM that, just by way of example, no longer serves your purpose, but you're so tethered to it that you're almost afraid to change something, even though you know it's broken and it's no longer working for you,
Well, I
but
mean,
you still don't want to touch it.
well, I mean, so many of those enterprise systems, in the legal world and elsewhere, I mean, half their business model depends on your hesitation to make a change because
That's right.
because you're so intertwined and you just the idea of doing it. And so you end up with all these workarounds, which ends up defeating the efficiencies that you originally were paying to achieve. So it's kind of a double bind.
And that's the craziest part. They'll sell you add-on after add-on after add-on, and this will fix this, and this will fix this, and this will fix this. But you're not addressing the foundation. The foundation is your CRM. And if you're not able to be fluid and move your data from one point to another point, it speaks to the same example we just went on. It's another fixture that either you're adapting or you're unfortunately failing.
The timing of decisions. How does timing change the weight or the impact of a decision? Meaning, like the same choice made early versus later can create completely different consequences. Can you speak to that?
100%. Timing is absolutely everything. Going back to where we are today, there are certain changes that are being implemented that are affecting our daily lives. And the same changes, going back to technology for just a moment, are affecting not only the way that we're doing business, but the way that people are consuming. And if you're not getting ahead of it and adjusting your business model to the way people are consuming, you're destined to fail. You're simply setting yourself up for a situation where, if the timing is not right and you're on the receiving end, when the ones that have already understood that there is a massive change, there is, for lack of better words, a revolution in the way that people are consuming and the way that people are receiving information. If you're on the receiving side of that, you're likely to simply shutter your doors. If you're able to anticipate, and it's simple research, the data is available, the analytics are available, the way to change and adapt is out there, but it takes time and it is the right timing to do it, which is going to determine whether or not you're able to sustain or you simply fail. The ones that are anticipating these changes have been implementing them for months, if not longer. The ones that are hoping that things stay the same, unfortunately, are going to see in a very, very short period of time, I would say in a matter of months, that unfortunately your systems are no longer going to serve you.
Yeah, stuff moves fast, as you described. I'm curious where, in your work, say with founders, where do you see founders underestimate how much a, supposedly temporary decision can become permanent once people or expectations and habits form around it?
Mostly you're going to see it in operations for sure. Not just things like hiring and firing, but just inertia on problems in your company where you may have identified it, but because you're so busy, let's just say you have a problematic department that's underperforming, you know that there's a problem, but you're so consumed with the practice of law or the business of being in business that you're not necessarily addressing the root of the issue. You're treating the symptom, you may be adding additional staff or changing certain systems that are in place, but you're not dealing with the underlying issue. So operations is a common place where inertia is your worst enemy. The other part, and this is a lot more than just trial and error, is marketing and advertising. People are not tracking their data. They're not measuring their analytics. Their their system is a spaghetti system where they're hopefully throwing things at a wall and just praying that something comes back. And because it looks like it's working, they think that they're profiting. But in reality, you're just hoping that the next month pays for the prior month. And it's the same type of setup where just because of you're used to doing things a certain way, you're continuing to do things a certain way. And this goes back to our initial conversation. You need to stay ahead of the times. Adaptability is not just being able to think on your feet, it's predictability. It's being able to see things before they happen, it's being prepared ahead of time, making the necessary changes, making the necessary adjustments. So when the time comes, it has no impact on you. Just by word of real example, in the times of 2020, when there was a true shutdown, our firm was one of the few that simply was not affected because we were already prepared for complete remote work. This wasn't something that was brand new or new to us. It wasn't foreign. It was something we were already implementing, not because we were anticipating a horrible situation in the world, but just because you can predict where the world is going and how people need to be operating. So when COVID rolled around and we had our government shutdown, we continued business as usual. In fact, we grew. And part of the reason was it was a seamless transition. Folks that were otherwise required to come in were able to pick up and work from wherever they had to work at the time. When we were able to come back, we came back. So this isn't just an example of adaptability. It was predicted that at some point in time, we would need to be remote, whether it's COVID or simply the fact that people are now looking for more remote positions, which is a very real thing. Today's employment market, just overall, people don't want to be glued to a brick and mortar. So if you're hiring and you're expanding, you're unfortunately lowering your candidate class if you're requiring a mandated in-person position. And I completely understand that for certain types of businesses, including certain parts of the legal field, it's absolutely necessary for certain roles to be present. But the word present is subjective.
Yeah.
And present doesn't necessarily mean that you're glued to the chair and you're brick and mortar. Present can mean, for example, that your team is sitting on a recorded video conference during business hours where management can screen and watch their operations, where they can communicate with each other live without necessarily having to come into work. And this has the same enforcement, the same impact, the same level of communication as physically being in the same place. And it's the foresight to be able to understand that it's not just the market shift, it's a cultural shift. It's a freedom that people have been granted in 2020 that they just don't want to take back anymore. They don't want to give back the fact that they were given an opportunity to spend more time with their families and work at home, which for some really is better than being in a work environment. And understanding that long term, this is how business will be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great example. And, like you said, the information's out there, right? Where you can, or you can consult with people, experts, and do that crystal balling, to kind of see where trends are going. And then what I don't hear, but you've demonstrated, it's that, it's one thing to have the information or to know that there's an issue that needs to be dealt with. The other thing is you got to be willing to act. So many, I think, managers, they're they're almost too cautious, and then back to that idea of a late decision versus an early decision, it ends up potentially doing more harm than good. So uh,
Absolutely.
with the just the couple of minutes we have left, I'm curious that in your experience talking about decision making, which types of decisions might quietly narrow future opportunities even when the firm appears to be growing. Are there any examples like that?
One of the first that comes to mind is, who is your demographic? Who is your ideal client? If you're a specialist and you're operating in a specific area, and that particular type of area has a decrease in potential clientele, for example. And in part, this can be because certain things are now autonomous, where people are able to access information online and they may not necessarily need your business, meaning they don't necessarily need your professional oversight as much as they did before. That may be something that in the future may severely impact your business. So, understanding that today access to information is readily available. Your job as a professional is to understand, how am I a value add? How can I make sure that people, knowing that people have readily available knowledge and information, how can I make sure that I am the person that shows them how to use it, how to implement it into their daily lives if I'm in the service sector? What kind of product and service can I add to them to make sure that it's not just information and knowledge, but it serves a true function in their life? And this will essentially solidify your position, that even if you are a specialist in a highly focused area of practice or profession, that you're showing the public, or you're showing the commercial market, if your clientele are commercial, that you are adding value, notwithstanding the fact that the information is readily available.
Right.
How to use it is more important than the ability to have it.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, it's so much information. It's ubiquitous, right? And it's like having the expertise and knowing what to do with it is where often the value comes in. Well, Russell, always interesting. We're out of time here, but it's good to see you, and I know we'll talk again in the near future.
Absolutely. And as always, you can find us at morganlegalny.com, on all social media platforms at morganlegalny, 24 hours a day at 888-529-1315. Till next time on Obsessed with Success.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. And hey, be sure to like and follow and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.